Story 1. Never knowing how much time you have left, also dying of something chronic that slowly saps your ability to function and living in a shell scares me. Story 2. I am unable to understand the concept of having no awareness, no existence, and ultimate nothingness. It is not these things that scare me, but my inability to comprehend them, as I believe it affects my ability to come to terms with them. Story 3. Death does not scare me. How I will die definitely does. I was dead before being born and will be dead after dying. Everyone is a wave, a moment in the vast ocean. It crashes and returns to its source, the greater existence. Story 4. The fear of being trapped in my dead body, aware and able to feel but unable to move or speak. If I am cremated, it will be agony, but being buried would bring a different pain, that of rotting. Plus the boredom of having nothing to do but think and maybe be visited by family members who tell me what is happening in the world above. Story 5. Then I will be nothing more than a headstone sitting among millions of others in Arlington's back 40, and my existence by comparison will be nothing, as the headstone will be around longer than I ever was. In the unlikely event that someone passes my grave, it will simply be lost among the sea of others, with no one bothering to read my name, just saved as a plot number and name in a computer in an office. Story 6. Not completing what I came here to do, leaving lessons unlearned, and potentially having to do it all again in an even later stage of capitalism. Story 7. How sudden it can be. You could literally be sitting or walking down the street, and suddenly your heart stops or you have an aneurysm. Even if you take care of yourself, it can happen out of nowhere sometimes. Story 8. Knowing the potential for a great life I could have led, the lives I could have helped, and the progress I could have contributed to, but also knowing that due to my mistakes and faults, I was not able to do that. Story 9. As a Christian, despite believing in God, I still fear that in the end, I will find out that I was wrong. Either there truly is nothing and I will never know, or another God rejects me for worshiping another. It is a small fear I have, but I try to live an honest life, loving everyone, so at the very least, I will die knowing I was a genuinely good person for the most part. Story 10. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius. Story 11. The chance that anything might come after. I do not want an afterlife. I do not want to be born again as someone else. I do not want to come back as an animal. I am so tired. When I am done here, I want to be done. Story 12. For the longest time, it was the thought of the pain that scared me. But lately, I have been thinking that is the last pain I have to feel ever, and it is over. Story 13. Not existing anymore. Every time that thought enters my head, I panic. I do not know how to live with the thought that one day I will die, even though it is inevitable. I hate anxiety. Story 14. The loved ones, my wife and son, left behind still depend on me. I have enough life insurance but still worry about them. Story 15. I am scared of the suffering before death, but not death itself. We have all been dead before for billions of years, and everything was just fine. Story 16. I'm not particularly afraid of dying itself. What truly unsettles me is the thought of my family suffering a significant loss in quality of life and opportunity if I were to die. I am the primary earner in our household. My income allows my wife to stay home, and my children to focus fully on their education, sports, and creative pursuits without the burden of part-time jobs, student loans, or financial stress. The idea that all of that could unravel, that their stability and freedom could vanish overnight, is what truly weighs on me. Story 17. I am not scared about what happens to me. It will probably be a painful death, so I just have to embrace it when the time comes. I think about those I will leave behind and whether they will be okay. Story 18. Isn't it crazy that once you die, media will continue on? Books, music, movies, shows. Your favorite song might be created after you have passed. Absolutely crazy concept. I guess I am not really answering the original poster's question, though. Story 19:1. The experience that my soul will go through, the psychosis of it all, but mainly. 2. How it will happen. Story 20. I think about death all the time. I have since I was in my mid-20s. I fear it. I fear the afterlife and the retribution God will take on me for all the bad things I have done. If you knew me, you would think I am just a normal, average person, a nice guy, but I feel so much guilt and shame for all the mistakes and bad behavior. It weighs on me. I watch near-death experiences all the time to try to better understand what the afterlife might hold and how I can position myself to receive a favorable judgment. Writing this down makes me seem crazy, even to me, but it is all true. I just constantly think about death. Story 21. The idea of not having lived enough. Death itself does not really scare me. It is the fear of not having lived long enough for my daughter or to have done what I want to do to make a difference in the world. Story 22. Maybe it is possible that our nerves remain and we are somehow alive in a super abstract way, and we cannot scream for help. Story 23. That people will be looking at me, moving me around, talking about me, and I will not know it. Also, the day after I die, a huge major event happens that I want to know about, like California drops into the ocean, Russia lambasts the United States with hundreds of nuclear weapons, or a volcanic eruption wipes out Alaska. Story 24. Knowing those I care about will also experience it, and some before me, leads to a feeling of losing something important in my life to an inevitability. Story 25. Being dead does not scare me, but actively dying kind of does. I just do not want to suffer a whole lot in the process. Story 26. Physical pain, if there is any, is one thing we all fear. What is even more frightening to me is the revelation of one of the following two. 1. When I am dead, there is nothing. No next step, no afterlife, no superior power. Nothing. This would simply mean my whole life, my entire existence, was just a random event, one speck of dust in an insurmountable dune. 2. There is an afterlife and I have absolutely no control over it. Story 27. Not believing in an afterlife, I wish I were naive enough to believe fairy tales in a book rewritten by a king to keep his subjects in line. Story 28. The pain I might experience. The unknown of potential life after. The potential judgment of God or God's judgment after. I am already fearful of heights. The fact that my spirit may float in space scares me. Just the general fact that we have no idea what comes after. Story 29. Being a ghost and not being able to find a friend because everyone is scared of me. I am used to not being seen. That is how it is when we get older. It is the loneliness part. I guess not being seen kind of prepares you for it. Never mind. Story 30. It is just nothing. Ever again. Dreamless sleep forever. The only experience I will ever have in the history of the universe is over for eternity. Story 31. Although it is not immediate, I would prefer for it to be over quickly rather than prolonged. Story 32. Nothing. Death is quiet, it is easy, and it is pain-free. Dying, on the other hand, I am terrified that when it is my time, someone will not let me, and I will be physically tortured before finally being allowed peace. Do not resuscitate. Story 33. The fear of it all just ending. That is it. Lights out. No more existence. Utterly terrifying to me. Story 34. Failing it again. I am a failure at living and dying. Not once, not twice, not even 3 times. 30 times. I must be immortal or just limited in resources. Story 35. Nothing. I just hate that I will be leaving my daughter behind in such an ugly world. I will not be there to protect her. Story 36. The thought of death does not scare me. It is how it will happen or what comes after that genuinely terrifies me. Is it just a sudden end, lights out, and a vast sea of nothingness? Do we come back as a different person with no memory or little memory of our past life? Story 37. The part about what comes after death scares me. While I would love for there to be an afterlife, I think it is more like lights out when we die. My only problem with that is, what does that look like? Does everything just go black? Or is it like before we were born? What does nothing look like? Now that I have experienced existing in consciousness, it is almost impossible to imagine that not being there anymore. Story 38. If it will hurt, then what comes after? Is it just a snap and then gone? No thoughts, no pain, no consciousness. Just nothing? Is there an afterlife? Story 39. It is not necessarily the act of death. It is what becomes of us after death that scares me. The unknown. Story 40. Not so much death in itself, but rather having lived a life that was unfulfilled. I am trying to live my life as best as I can, but the way the world is, it feels like it is getting more difficult to survive. I just want to have a good job, friends, and to travel the world more. It just feels so hard, honestly, but I cannot give up. Story 41. Realizing I did not accomplish what I wanted and worrying that my children will not have what they need. Does that ever stop? Story 42. I have many reasons to list. Not being able to resist it, not being able to see your loved ones again, what happens after you leave this world, and everything you leave behind. Story 43. I do not care about the dying part. Eternal rest sounds nice, and I look forward to it. What I do find scary is the possibility of coming back as a ghost and being stuck watching people for eternity. I do not want to be trapped in the mortal realm. Let me rest in peace. Story 44. The dying part is the process of your body failing in some way. Being dead does not concern me, but dying does. Story 45. I cannot fathom having absolutely zero awareness. Yes, I experienced that before I was born, and yes, when I have dreamless sleep, but I eventually regain consciousness. I will never have consciousness ever again after dying. What will that be like? I know someone will say nothing, and I know that, but it is still not enough of an answer. Story 46. The possible pain, the nothingness, dying young and missing out on much of life, developing dementia and spending the last 20 years not knowing what day it is or forgetting your loved ones, getting an incurable disease. Can you tell I have anxiety about dying? Story 47. I'm not necessarily scared of dying. I guess I'm just scared of the complete and total loss of a stream of consciousness. The only thing we have to compare it to is sleep, but even that is not totally accurate. It sends me into an existential crisis to think about it. I'm open to believing in some sort of afterlife, but if there isn't one, then death is just nothing. But then what does nothing feel like? Logically, I know it won't feel like anything, but I still don't have a comparison or reference point for that because I have never been completely without some stream of consciousness or awareness. So, I guess I am just afraid of not knowing what death will be like, even if it is nothing. Story 48. I would say the unknown, also a traumatic death, knowing you are going to die. All that seems scary enough to me. Story 49. Death itself is not my problem. My problem is what happens after dying. Will we see just darkness without hearing, smelling, emotions, or feeling anything? Or will we be reincarnated into a different world as a different species? Or will we restart our lives with a different or the same ending? Story 50. Not knowing how I am going to die is unsettling. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, suffer from cancer for 5 years in my 70s, or die in my sleep when I am 102. Is it really just nothing? Just like lights out, the end? I really hope so because accidentally being cremated alive terrifies me. Story 51. It sounds selfish, but my loved ones have to deal with the aftermath. I know that if my husband dies before me, I will not have anything to live for. Story 52. The uncertainty of an afterlife. I have some Christian beliefs, but at the same time, I am still very uncertain about it. Maybe I will die and there is nothing. Maybe I will die and there is a whole other religion's afterlife. Maybe I will just go to hell. Story 53. How it will happen. I am not necessarily scared of death, just how it will happen, the unknown of it all. Story 54. It is strange to think about how I could go from being a living person to someone who is no longer alive. I am also afraid to find out what happens in the afterlife. The whole concept is honestly scary. Story 55. Death itself does not scare me, but I suspect I will be one of those souls with unfinished business. There are some things I really would like to do, but I know it is unlikely to happen. Story 56. I do not really fear death. The only thing that would bother me is not being able to tell everyone what is there after death. Story 57. I do not fear death itself, but the act of dying terrifies me. The fact that I will breathe for one last time or that I might collapse in the middle of a heart attack where no one notices. Story 58. This thread is not for me, I suspect. I welcome death to some extent. Being asleep is preferable to being awake, and what is death but permanent sleep? I am not actively suicidal, just maybe today is the day I get hit by a bus. One can hope. Story 59. The idea that the people who love me most will struggle for the rest of their lives with the burden of my death is painful. I will not be here to mourn myself. I mourn the eventual loss of my life as I live, but the ones I leave behind will suffer, and it will unintentionally be my fault. Story 60. Nothing about it scares me. I have already technically died once when I had a heart attack and they had to restart my heart during a tooth infection. It is essentially nothingness, and it is hard to imagine. It is like you do not even know that you exist. You are unconscious of it. Then, all of a sudden, you are back in reality when they revive you as if no time has passed. Story 61. It does not really scare me as much as the fact that someday I will not exist. I will not get to see the future after that. What will my children and the world be like in 50 years? Also, silly questions like, will humans ever make contact with intelligent aliens? Story 62. The finality of it. Non-existence. I cannot grasp the idea that my thoughts will simply end and not continue. It scares me that there will be a point when I am coherent, and then one day I will no longer exist to think. I experience panic attacks about this from time to time. I do not fear being alone. I am just terrified that my inconsequential existence could be extinguished at any moment, and there is nothing I can do about it. Story 63. It's not death that matters, but how I get there. What will be the reason I die? Did I suffer? Was I scared? Did I even know it was happening? My uncle died from cancer in December. He wasn't ready. He made that very clear. I'm scared of that, honestly terrified. When it happens, I hope it's quick and I don't know it's coming. Story 64. Death does not scare me. I am prepared to go at any time. However, there are two things about death that scare me. First, losing those around me. Second, dying before completing my work. Story 65. The method by which I die is the only thing I worry about. Death itself is nothing to fear because once you are dead, you will not know you are dead. You will know nothing, miss nobody, feel nothing, and regret nothing. You simply cease to exist, just as before you were conceived. Story 66. Those who remain feel pain. I do not know if there is an afterlife, but I do not see any evidence for it. When I die, I suspect whatever form I take will not really care. Story 67. There are three things that scare me. 1. Where will my cats go? Who will look after them? I love them more than life. My friends and family know this. 2. I hope it is not painful. 3. The people I leave behind. Story 68. Who finds my body? I told everyone I want a welfare check called in. I have read thousands of sudden death reports from my last job. I do not want the people I love to go through that trauma. Remember me as a sarcastic old woman, not a corpse. Story 69. Every year you are alive, you pass your death day, and you have no idea when it is going to be or how it is going to happen. Story 70. I feel sad that I will never see how the human race will develop. Will we become a spacefaring civilization, or will we wipe ourselves out in a nuclear fireball? On second thought, maybe I will live to see the latter after all. Story 71. Being forgotten. It is said that after 3 generations, you are no longer remembered. I do not want to be forgotten, to have everything about me fade into obscurity and then vanish. A man only truly dies when no one speaks his name. I do not want to be famous so everyone knows my name, but I want a few people over the years to find my name, discover something I did, and remember it. This is one of the major motivations to finish my novel. Story 72. Gone forever. Meaning, even if you do wake up as another person in another time, you will never remember your past, your family, your friends. Then you have to learn all over again, make mistakes all over again. Like a never-ending broken record. That's if this happens. Maybe it is just the what if in general. Story 73. The timing of it, not being there to provide the support my family needs, not seeing who my young children will become, and not being there when they need me. I just do not want to go too soon. Story 74. What happens after you die? What happens next? And after that? It is an endless loop we are all stuck in for eternity. Do not just say it is darkness because something must follow that as well. Story 75. The fact that I will most likely pass away before my wife. I do not care about what happens to me when my time is up, but I know it will absolutely devastate her. And it hurts me to know that I will put her through that. Story 76. Nothing. While I am not seeking it out, I am fine. I have completed my major accomplishments. I hope to have children, but if not, I am fine. Story 77. Nothing really. If I were to die tomorrow, my only concerns tonight would be how my elderly parents, partner, and closest friend would be emotionally. I do not have children, so that is not a concern. However, I do not like living very much, so I am aware this is a biased perspective. I guess I would really prefer not to go in a horrifically painful or mutilating way. That would be scary. Story 78. Everyone is making a huge deal about it, to the point of lying about knowing what happens afterward, and using that lie to control everyone else's perception of reality. Frankly, it makes death sound very relaxing. Story 79. How unexpected it is not knowing how you will die. It could be gruesome, scary, and painful, or it could be instant and painless. You have no idea when your time will come, nor those you love. What comes after death is less certain. I guess the process of dying scares me, but not death itself. Story 80. Nothing. It never concerned me before I was born, and it will not concern me after I am gone. My only hope is that it is instantaneous or during my sleep. Story 81. I'm not scared of being dead. I'll be dead, and I won't know. I'm worried that actually dying will be painful. My significant other just had a near-death experience. She lost consciousness. When she woke, she said it was like a pleasant dream. Story 82. What will happen to my beloved little dog? I have a designation in my will and am leaving money to the person to cover veterinary bills, food, snacks, and other expenses. I know she will be well cared for, but I still feel anxious about it. I have no siblings, aunts, uncles, or cousins to leave money to, so everything goes to my dog's caregiver and an animal shelter. Story 83. That my children are not going to know what to do, mainly because I do not know what I am doing. Story 84. Leaving my loved ones upset. I do not want to upset them. I love them, but once the ones who love me most are gone, I am done. I will go to the nearest bridge. No kids, no close relatives. Bridge. Life has been difficult for me since 11th grade without them over time. I did not know my cat until I was 26. No one will miss me, no one will have to step in and pay for me. All of my inheritance is going to charity. Story 85. It's not so much that it's scary. I die. It was my time. What I am worried about is who I will leave behind, what kind of heartache I will bring with my eventual absence, and who will I leave behind to weep over me. Story 86. My family and loved ones having to lose me. This thought bothers me. If my city were destroyed by a nuclear attack and everyone who cared about me were suddenly dead, my mind would be at peace. Story 87. Nothing about death itself scares me, but dying frightens me. I hope I go peacefully. I am not really concerned with what happens afterward. Story 88. I am scared about not knowing when it will happen, if it will be painful, and I do not want to leave my children. Story 89. I will probably be forgotten by history. Every interaction, every bit of pain, gone after 2 generations, 3 if I am lucky. Story 90. I have a fatal illness that will last a long time. I also know my death will not be pleasant. The part that scares me the most is leaving my family. I have only one daughter, and after I am gone, she will be alone. I have come to terms with dying and accepted it. Story 91. Not much at this point, honestly. The reason I say that is I just cannot think of a good reason to fear it. However, being in the moment of a near-death experience might change my mind for the duration of it. This reaction would come from instinct and emotion rather than a rational approach. It is hard to say without actually being in it. Afterthought. Dying in a particularly stupid or shameful way might be a bit awkward. Story 92. Literally nothing. To clarify, I have been blessed and have had a life many people only dream of. I am not suicidal or depressed, but after a lifetime of anxiety, health issues, and paying bills, it will be nice to have a quiet mind finally. I am not sure if I explained that well, but for a few years now, I have said if I am told I only have weeks to live, I would be okay with it because I have done a lot and had an incredible life. I can look back and say, hell yeah, that was mostly incredible. Story 93. The discontinuation of relationships. Not being there for those I love. When I die, I know my brain releases many chemicals and hormones that should make it one unforgettable experience. But after that, it is likely not my problem that I am gone. If there is an afterlife, I refuse to believe any all-powerful being would judge based on believing in them or a set of rules they laid out. More likely, it is an overall pass or fail. The best-case scenario is that I get the option to go around again, whatever that may be. But no matter what is after, it means I cannot be there for those I love. That will be my last thought, and that scares me. Story 94. Having an awkward funeral when the money being used could be better spent elsewhere. If there is a beyond, send me to Valhalla and call it a day. Story 95. My brother is trying to claim what I worked for. I am not married and do not have children. I need to create a will and leave everything to my sister's children. Story 96. Missing whatever comes after. I'd like to see where humanity goes. How far do we make it? Can we ever stop hating each other and focus on crushing the alien threat? I don't believe there is anything after. We probably just die and are gone. But if I can be a ghost, I am going to do it. Story 97. The Great Void, from which we may never return, contrasts with eternity. Eternity, even more alive, seems like a very long time to live, or at least until black holes devour all of creation. Story 98. Where do we go after? What if we do not get another life like my theory? I would not be alive anyway, but it is terrifying. I am scared of dying. Story 99. The idea that the afterlife will be no better than the life I have now, seeing that those who passed on are still doing the same heinous acts they did in life. Story 100. It doesn't. I have my own beliefs about what comes after, and even beyond that, I am completely exhausted from living with a physical disability in an incorrect body. Whenever death comes for me, I will greet it like an old friend. Story 101. Missing everyone I love here on Earth. Also, there will come a time when no one left on Earth will ever have known you. Story 102. Humans cannot comprehend being nothing at all, and that can make people feel scared. I think the more we talk about death, the less scary it becomes. We should not feel scared about something so natural. There is a beauty in death sometimes. Story 103. That I will not be able to talk to my child anymore. That I selfishly brought them into this world, knowing one day I would give them the pain of my absence. Story 104. How I die and when I die. I hope I can live a decently long life, but my fear is going out in a manner where I suffer a lot of pain before I die. Painful death scares me. Story 105. Literally, the whole question of what happens after death. Do we become a soul that roams freely, or is it eternal nothingness, or do we go to judgment and get sent to heaven or hell? Story 106. When will it happen? How will it happen? Will it hurt? That, and the fear of missing out. I don't take naps because I'm worried something interesting will happen without me. There are so many fun, exciting, and enriching things I could be doing instead of sleeping. Death is that multiplied by infinity. The idea of all the things I will die not knowing or not having experienced is crushing. Story 107. My dad was cutting deck boards on his table saw in the garage. He cut the last piece, handed it to my mom. She turned to put it on the pile and suddenly dropped dead from a heart attack. He cracked his head on the concrete floor but didn't bleed. It was like a switch went off in his heart. No warning, no gasping for breath or clutching his chest. Just on, then off. He loved working around his house. He was adding to the home he loved, being assisted by the woman he loved. My mom was a nurse and started cardiopulmonary resuscitation immediately. Their neighbor was in their front yard and called emergency services. The fire station was a mile away, and they were there in less than 5 minutes. Everything that could be done was done, so she didn't carry any guilt, unlike if she had been shopping or in the house when it happened. That's the way I want to go. No long-term illness, dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or a stroke that leaves you incapacitated for a long time. Story 108. After using dimethyltryptamine extensively, I have realized that death is going to feel amazing, especially if you are blessed to live a full life and die at an older age. It is very similar to being born, but in reverse. You are being separated from the human body, the shell of your soul. It is a powerful experience. You become free to the universe and time, as you were before this body. Your energy will continue until it manifests again, perhaps based on how you treated others. Story 109. I do not know if death scares me, but the thought of my children having to grow up without their father terrifies me. Story 110. I am not afraid of death after it happens. Not having any awareness or responsibilities with all the unconscious rest I could ever want sounds not too bad. It is the process of dying that is difficult. I have had chronic pain and fatigue for most of my life, and to think it will get worse or something else will happen to add to it until the end is a scary thought. Story 111. That there is an afterlife. When I am gone, I want to be done. No afterlife, no reincarnation, nothing, just silence. Story 112. Leaving my loved ones behind. The grief they will carry. The loose ends I still need to deal with. Story 113. Not being able to take care of my wife or daughter anymore. Before that, I had no fear. Now I am terrified. Story 114. Not being able to say goodbye to her one last time. My biggest fear is dying away from her. Another fear is her seeing me pass away or leave her. Story 115. Being forgotten, having everyone who is important to you go on with their lives, and you just not being there anymore. Story 116. We do not know what comes after. There are different beliefs, but nothing has been 100% objectively proven with hard, irrefutable evidence. Story 117. That it might hurt when I die. I have no clue at all what death will actually be like, so I feel no reason to be scared of it. However, I am scared of what the pain of death might be like. I am not ashamed to admit that. I am also scared of the notion that at death, the moment of dying stretches into infinity the way that dreams seem to last forever, but I also know that most of my dreams are nothing but mystery and very rarely frightening, so I do not know that I am truly afraid of that. Story 118. The feeling of emptiness she will feel when my mom opens my room and finds it empty is profound. The house will be lonely. She will feel sad seeing my mug in the morning when she realizes she does not need to make tea for me or drop me off at the bus stop every day. Story 119. It is the finality of it. There is no turning back. You can no longer do anything, talk to the people you love, or even share your experience. It is as if you are nothing but a speck in time that will one day be forgotten. Story 120. Not knowing if I will ever see my loved ones again. I hate thinking about death as the final goodbye. Story 121. Nothingness. You close your eyes, and your 7 minutes of consciousness will say, "Where am I? What will I do from now on?" You walk in nothingness. Little by little, your consciousness weakens, and you do not know if there will be another life or if you only live once. Story 122. Literally just the extreme fear of missing out. Like, what do you mean I won't get to know what happens to humanity? I will never know the end of the story. It makes living it almost seem cruel and pointless. Story 123. Nothing. I genuinely do not care. The thought of dying of old age, on the other hand, is completely terrifying. Sitting there while your body shuts down, knowing you are going to die and not being able to stop it is terrifying. But I am not scared of death itself. The thought of just randomly dying with no warning or in a way I could control is strangely comforting compared to the fact that at some point my body is going to start shutting down and there is nothing I can do to stop it. Story 124. I do not fear death. I tell everyone to get right with God, whatever that means to them. I do worry about who will take care of my cats. Story 125. Missing out on my children growing up, not being there when they need me, being the source of deep sadness and aching, like I feel for those I love who have passed, is hard for me to reconcile. Not being there for my kids breaks my heart to think about. On a personal level, my heart has stopped on many occasions due to arrhythmia. Slipping into oblivion was easy and painless. I was eased by a dreamlike happiness and a feeling of being safe and loved. In the future, it may not be like this again, and I do fear a painful, lonely death where I lose my dignity. Story 126. Scares? Nothing. It saddens me that everything will go on and I will not know about it. But that is just an idea now. When I am dead, I will not care. Story 127. The scariest thing about death for me is the thought that after dying, I might have to start all over again from preschool and go through studying and working hard again, wasting all the years of effort I have already put in. Story 128. There is a point someday when my children will no longer exist. That drives me to believe in something beyond more than anything. Story 129. That all this just ends. What is on the other side? Is there an other side? It is also a lonely experience. Story 130. The way I get there is important. My dad just died from dementia. I do not want to die that way. Being dead does not scare me because I cannot remember anything before I was born. It will be like that. Story 131. That it may come for me before I am satisfied with my life. I think it was Franz Kafka who said, "He is terribly afraid of dying because he has not yet lived." Yes, I feel that. Story 132. A painful death. Death itself does not worry me because we cannot control when it is our time to go. I am alive today, so I will enjoy it the best I can. As a depressed pessimist, this is not easy. When it is my time to go, it is my time to go. I just do not want it to be painful. Story 133. Not a single thing. I welcome it. If it is my time, then it is my time. There is no sense in worrying about what you cannot change. Story 134. Being a deceased person. Deceased individuals are extremely unpleasant, and I cannot accept the idea that intelligent, attractive, and kind humans eventually become deceased. Story 135. Nothing. I have experienced love, all I have wanted in life. I could die tomorrow and would die happy. Story 136. The off switch that presumably never turns back on. I am used to existing, have been doing it my whole life, and I do not like change. Story 137. Fear of missing out and dying alone. Dying is going to be difficult either way, but even holding the hand of a stranger is better than spending my last minutes on this earth alone. Story 138. Not being there for my wife and children anymore. Them going through life without me. My wife potentially moving on if I pass away early. Story 139. The possibility that it will be nothing more than your consciousness floating in limbo without any form of stimuli. Just an empty void representing the afterlife where you cannot move or sense anything. Story 140. I love my existence and will miss the people in it. Hopefully, infinity means I can relive this loop as it very much pleases me, imperfections and all. Story 141. Leaving my family, my boyfriend, and my friends, all of whom have trusted me. I am not someone important or someone who has left a mark. I am not claiming to be at the level of Freddie Mercury or anyone like that. I want to make a difference for students by lowering the number of people who no longer want to study and make a positive impact in that way. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.